The price of youth. Los Angeles glittered in the rearview mirror as Carl's knuckles whitened against the steering wheel. He hated the city, always had. Too loud, too fast. It had been Dorothy's idea to take a final road trip before their time ran out. They were an old couple now, their frail bodies hunched in the dusty Buick that had carried them through so many decades. The wrinkles on Carl's face told stories of war and loss, while Dorothy, once radiant with youthful fire, now sagged with age. Her once golden hair turned thin and grey. The hum of the highway was the only sound until Dorothy broke the silence.
Do you ever think about them?
Carl's mouth twitched.
No.
They were so young, so full of life.
She sighed, almost wistfully. Carl glanced at her, eyes narrowing.
That life is long behind us. We made our choice.
I know, it gets harder to remember why we stopped.
Carl didn't respond. The truth was, the temptation never fully left. Every day he fought it. The deal they'd made with the devil was clear. Eternal life, in exchange for blood. But after centuries of killing, there was nothing left inside them but a hollow ache. It had been decades since they last claimed a life, choosing instead to let nature take its course, aging like any other mortal couple. Until tonight. It started with a sudden jolt. The Buick lurched forward as something hit it from behind. Carl cursed,
Damn.
gripping the wheel, pulling to the side of the road. A black SUV had rear-ended them, its headlights glaring like the eyes of a predator in the night.
Shit.
Carl muttered, stepping out of the car. Dorothy sat still, her gaze fixed on the shadowy figures emerging from the SUV. Two young men, faces twisted with malice and the kind of confidence that only comes with a gun in hand. The taller of the two, wearing a dirty black hoodie, approached Carl with a smirk.
Old man?
The guy sneered, pulling out a handgun.
Looks like you had a little accident.
Carl's heart sank.
Look, we don't want any trouble.
You already got it.
The man shoved the gun against Carl's chest.
Keys, now.
The shorter one, tattooed and wiry, circled toward Dorothy. She met his eyes with calm, unnerving silence, her frail hands gripping her purse. His grin widened as he leaned into the window.
Come on, Grandma, let's make this easy. You don't want to die tonight, do you?
Dorothy smiled sweetly, her voice soft.
Not particularly, no.
Then get the fuck out of the car.
The shorter one snapped, pulling the door open. Carl gritted his teeth looking at his wife. She nodded barely perceptibly. They stepped out together, two fragile figures against the darkness. The taller one kicked Carl in the back of the knees, sending him crashing to the ground.
You're gonna come with us.
He growled.
We're gonna have a little fun.
They were shoved into the back of the SUV, Carl's hands trembling with age, or maybe something else. The two men climbed in, the taller one driving while the shorter one watched them from the passenger seat, his gun never leaving Carl's chest. The city lights faded as they sped down a desolate highway into the shadowy outskirts. The men didn't speak, except to snigger at each other occasionally. Carl could feel Dorothy's eyes on him, but he refused to look at her. He knew what she was thinking. He could feel it, deep inside, like a beast waking from slumber. Eventually, they pulled into a remote gravel lot, surrounded by trees and silence. The SUV's headlights flickered out, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The taller one dragged Carl out of the vehicle, slamming him against the side of the car.
Where's the money? You got a stash somewhere, don't you, old man? Rich old couple like you.
Carl's lip cracked as the man punched him. Blood dribbled down his chin, but he didn't make a sound. Dorothy was pulled out next, her purse ripped from her frail hands. The shorter one dumped its contents on the ground, disappointed at the small wad of bills.
That's it?
He snarled.
Where's the rest, bitch?
Dorothy's smile was gone now, her lips thin.
You won't find what you're looking for.
Oh, we'll find it.
The taller one grinned, running the barrel of his gun along Carl's jaw.
And if you don't have it, well, there's other ways to pay.
Carl groaned. The years of suppressed rage and hunger bubbling up inside him.
You don't know what you're doing.
What was that, old man?
The shorter one grabbed Carl by the collar, yanking him closer.
You gonna beg, huh? Gonna cry?
Carl met his eyes, and for the first time the darkness inside him stirred fully awake.
I wasn't talking to you.
The words hung in the air like a cold mist, confusing the two men. Then slowly Dorothy straightened, her frail body shedding its age like a snake slipping free of old skin. Her back arched, her eyes glinting like the stars in the dead of night. Her voice, once soft and frail, now echoed with centuries of malevolent power.
We've been kind for too long.
She hissed, her hands flexing as if remembering their true strength.
We've been good, but you...
She laughed, a dry, rattling sound that sent a shiver through the air. Carl followed suit, his posture shifting. The ache in his bones vanished, replaced by the weightless feeling of youth long forgotten. His hands clenched into fists, the power returning to him like an old friend.
We were going to die, but maybe not tonight.
The taller one stepped back, gun trembling in his hands.
What the fuck?
Dorothy's smile widened, her eyes glowing an unnatural crimson.
You should have left us alone.
Before the men could react, Dorothy moved. In a blink, she was on the taller man, her hands wrapping around his throat. His scream was cut short as her fingers pierced his flesh like knives, his blood spilling over her pale hands. His body convulsed as she drained the life from him, her face twisting into something inhuman, something ancient. The shorter one tried to run, but Carl was on him in an instant, faster than any man his age or any man at all had the right to be. He grabbed the man by the arm, twisting it with sickening force until bone cracked and skin tore. The gun clattered to the ground, forgotten.
You picked the wrong couple,
Carl growled, his voice deep and monstrous. The man screamed, but it was drowned out by the wet crunch of Carl's hand crushing his throat, blood spraying into the night. Dorothy stood, wiping her blood-soaked hands on her dress, looking at the lifeless bodies with quiet satisfaction.
Just like old times, huh?
Carl nodded, breathing heavily.
Yeah, just like old times.
The silence returned, thick and heavy, broken only by the distant hum of the highway. The stars above twinkled indifferently as they always had. Dorothy turned to Carl, her eyes softening.
One last time?
Carl smiled, brushing the blood from his lips.
One last time.
And together, they walked hand in hand back to the Buick, leaving the bodies in the dark, knowing the hunger was never truly gone. They'd tried to let it fade. They'd tried to be human. But tonight, they remembered who they really were, and the world would never be safe again.